Welcome to the College Football Survivor Show, where playoff survival is always on the line. Here's Shehan J. Haraja and Bobak Hayeri.
Hey everybody, it's the College Football Survivor Show. I'm Bobak Hayeri with my co-host, Shehan J. Haraja, national college football writer for CBS Sports. We're glad to have you with us. The playoff is set, so we're going to go and take a look at our own brackets in this episode. But before we get to it, let me remind you, you can find us on X and TikTok at CFP Survivor Show, where we have video highlights, run polls, listen to your feedback, take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe to us wherever you get your shows. But let's get to it. So this has been, we just had that calm weekend, the weekend where, there's Army-Navy, there's some FCS playoffs, this Heisman ceremony, which it's a shame. This is the year where I wish there was a little more hype behind it. And there was. But it's not where it was like 20 years ago. It just isn't. There's a lot of reasons why we could dissect that, but we're not necessarily going to. But how are you? How was your weekend, Shehan? This was like a nice was this at all a breather for you?
It definitely was a breather for me. I will say I did have to be on call and do some coverage of the Salute to Veterans Bowl, I think it was called. But it did end up being a good game. But it did mean that I didn't get fully a weekend without having to work some college football. But it was a good one overall. We got to this is the thing that's also crazy about the calendar and how it's worked out is that we're in a position now where it is December 17th and we are just starting to try to think about Christmas because of how crazy the season has been to this point. So we got most of our Christmas shopping done, which was our only true goal this weekend. Now, at the same time, our daughter did get sick at the end of the weekend, which made things even harder. But we'll take the wins where we can get them.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, so far, so good on my side. I got to go to Tampa to work the Gasparilla Bowl this week. But beyond that, I got my nails painted black in honor of the pirate stuff. I'm showing it on the camera, not like you all can see it. But I'm going to get a little bit of, we'll see. Maybe I'm going to lean a little bit into the fact that I look vaguely piratey when I get there. I don't think they lean into it enough for the record. It's the Gasparilla Bowl. For those who don't know, I didn't know about what the Gasparilla was until they changed the name of the bowl a few years ago to kind of emphasize that. Tampa Bay has this big pirate festival. It's actually a little later in the winter. So they decided to adapt that, and I like it. It's an ESPN events run bowl. It would be really cool if they leaned heavily into the pirate stuff. Because, Pop-Tarts, okay, I'm going to step back. Belk Bowl and then Duke's Mayo Bowl, they're the same bowl. The Charlotte Sports Foundation, they paved the way to you know what? We're not a CFP bowl. Let's just have fun. Let's just be silly. And, obviously the Mayo Bowl, dunking the coach, that, got people's attention. The Pop-Tart Bowl, Florida Citrus Sports, that's the organization that runs it. They've always been kind of cutting edge. They kicked that up a notch. So more bowls need to lean into the silliness. If you're not a playoff game, you are an exhibition game, which is fine. That's what bowl games began as. The Rose Bowl was just an idea of we're already having this Rose Parade. Why don't we also see if we can get some football teams out here, get some people on the East Coast to come and check out the West Coast in a fairly warm January. And then you saw similar, the Sugar Bowl, the Sun Bowl, all of those early bowls. So they were all exhibitions. For those of you who really know your college football history, they didn't even crown the national championship at that point. They crowned it at the end of the regular season with the final AP poll. So, at this point, Oregon would have already been the champion. And then, couple players, and it wasn't like the players were opting out. They were just more like, I'm going to go have some fun. Maybe I don't even know what the drinking age was in the 1930s. They're just going to go have a good time, relax, and maybe some fans will show up. And I think that's what the Bulls are kind of going. They're not going back to, but they are emphasizing. They should emphasize that point again. This is a bonus time. Some people, you're seeing teams that you like, but with opt-outs and graduations and things like that, you're getting an approximation of the team you followed. But you know what? It's college football. It's fun. It's great. Go sillier. And I want to see more bowls just go completely, make it intriguing. Maybe I'm going to credit the youth of America for this. The fact that the memes and all that stuff, that people love that. So I hope, the Pirate, they should go a little bit more on the Pirates, but I hope every bowl gets a little more aggressive in it. Granted, if you get a more serious tone, I don't know how far you can go with the salute to veterans and making that silly, but some of the other stuff, go for broke, go for complete broke. The Independence Bowl, bless their hearts, they put together, I think, just to kind of reiterate, Marshall backed out because apparently they had too many players transfer, which is nonsense. It's not like they don't have enough players on the roster. They lost their coach. There's a lot of things going on there, and then they're getting a deserved amount of heat for that. But I think there's a real opportunity. I love the fact that Independence Bowl, it's a real like old school. They're trying to promote Shreveport. They're trying to get people. I thought it was awesome. They got Louisiana Tech to step in there even though they weren't the number 1, 5, and 7 team in terms of APR academic progress rate. I guess it's past the due date of when that was a factor. They were just like, who wants to go? Or I heard they may have just gone down the list and everyone said no until they got to Louisiana Tech, which apparently only one team was behind them, and it was the other team that would say yes, Louisiana Monroe. But all of that said, so I'm excited. I'm really hyped for the Bulls. I mean, we're not going to break those down because they're not part of the college football race. But I mean, when we're recording this, tonight is the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, which kicks off at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. You're going to need coffee for this one, folks. You're going to need coffee. Not for the matchup. It's going to be a good game, but I mean, some folks are going to be really dreary-eyed tomorrow. Then we get some wonderful Wednesday midday action. It's going to be, this is what it's all about. This is what bowl season is.
Yeah, I mean the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl is right in my backyard, out in Frisco, Texas, only like 20 minutes from me. Like you said, I don't know that the timing was something that I was necessarily prioritizing when I'm trying to figure out whether I'm going to that game or not. But, like I will say too, and this game probably will have happened by the time you're listening to the episode, but I would expect Memphis to score a lot of points. That's my prediction for the game, is that Memphis is going to score a lot of points.
The only thing I do wonder, I know the FCS title game is in the same stadium. It's Toyota Stadium in Frisco.
Yes.
The thing is, they've moved. They were supposed to be there for a few more years, but they've announced this big renovation plan. So the FCS Bowl is moving. They're moving out of town for it, and it was agreed upon. No controversy there. I think they're going to be in Vandy Stadium for the next couple of years. But what's happening to the Frisco Bowl? Are they going to move it, or are they going to stop it? I mean, or are they going to do what the Bahamas did? The Bahamas Bowl was in Charlotte because they were renovating the stadium, and they didn't name it Bahamas. To their credit, they just called it like the famous Toasteries Bowl. But now they're back in the Bahamas. I mean, there's plenty of stadiums in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I think.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I was going to say is like, I think that they'll find a stadium in DFW that they can do this game. I'm really not that concerned about it.
Yeah, where's FC Dallas going to move to, like in the interim?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends on like how much capacity they want. Because how big is Toyota? Toyota's probably like 30,000, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
so
it's
I mean
20,000 for American football. So which is a hair
20,000.
A hair bigger than, for some reason, makes sense. Soccer stadium's a little bit bigger.
So I mean, I think that there is already a bowl game here, but like Ford Stadium, the SMU Stadium would be an obvious one. Apogee, North Texas would be an obvious one. Like there, and again, that doesn't even get into like some of the slightly smaller, but not tiny. Like I mean, Allen High School Stadium is like 15,000. Like it gets you pretty close. So I think that they'll be able to. I think that the organizers of the Frisco Bowl do not need to fret. I think that they can find a football field in Dallas, Texas.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to look at some games that might be a little more relevant to determining the national champion now. So we are going to break down our own individual brackets. So, I mean, again, I guess I'll just really quickly break down the matchup, since there's a chance you might be not as familiar with everyone. Or actually, I remember earlier today, I was trying to just think them off the top of my head, and I kept forgetting one. I'm like, I know there's a pairing, and I'm going to kick my butt when I don't remember. So what we have now in the first rounds, the ones that are going to be home games, we have Tennessee, the number 9 seed, heading over to number 8 Ohio State. We have Clemson, the number 12 seed, heading over to Texas. We have Indiana, the 10 seed, heading over to 7 Notre Dame. And we have SMU, the number 11 seed, heading over to Penn State. And then the winners of those will go on to play teams in the quarterfinals. The Ohio State-Tennessee winner will go to the Rose Bowl to play Oregon. The Texas-Clemson winner will go on to the Peach Bowl to play the number 4 seed Arizona State, the winner of the Big 12. Notre Dame and Indiana, the winner of that game will go on to play Georgia, the winner of the SEC and the Sugar Bowl. And then the Penn State SMU victor will go to the Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix, Glendale, but the Phoenix area to play Boise State, the surprise of this. I mean, I feel like this has become almost like we take it for granted. It's still a shock that the number 3 seed is a G5 program. Like I'm just, again, I've said it again, but I'm so glad we burned that potential argument that the G5 were not ready to be in this by having them that high up. Because you can say, oh, there's other teams that might deserve to be a 3 seed. Yeah, but no one's saying they don't deserve to be in the playoff. No one is saying they don't deserve to be in the playoff.
Not a single person.
Yeah,
not a single person.
Man, I'm excited for this. But those are the games, those are the teams, and we'll talk about, if we fill out a bracket where we go beyond that. But which game should we start with?
Yeah, let's start with the one in Austin, Texas versus Clemson. I think there's a lot of fun storylines in that one.
Absolutely. So obviously right now with Texas, I don't know, Quinn Ewers, how is his injury going? I know he was a bit, and to me, that's going to also hinge a little bit on how I think the game's going to go. But before I go to that, that's one of the big stories there. But also Clemson, they came back, finally beat a top 25 opponent in SMU. That exciting game that went down to the final second, the last game of championship weekend that determined the entire bracket because Clemson pulled that upset on SMU on that final 56-yard field goal. But it does boil down to it, though. Beating SMU the way they did after SMU handed them a bunch of points at the beginning of the game, that was kind of an exception rather than the rule. Last time we saw, I mean, not last time, but for a lot of people, they still think of that opening game with Georgia. They lost to Louisville. They've had a problem they lost to South Carolina. They've had a problem against most of the ranked teams they've played. And now they're going to be going to Austin to play Texas. Even though Texas has some questions on how Quinn Ewers is doing, I don't think they're going to bench him for Arch Manning or anything like that. Do we think this is a kind of game where Clemson has any opportunity, or is this something where Texas should roll?
We're going to learn a lot about Texas, I think, in this game. And look, we'll go deeper into the first round playoff games as well on the next show. But I do think that when you look at this matchup, Clemson is the type of team that has the ability to cause problems for Texas. And what I mean by that is they're a team that is really good up front, that has a dynamic playmaker at quarterback in Cade Klubnik, a kid from Austin, Texas, by the way, played at Austin Westlake. And I think that also, they're not awesome against the run, which I think is probably the thing that decides the game and allows Texas to win. But they are really good against the pass. They're really good in the secondary. And so I expect a Quinn Ewers mistake in this game. But what I'll also say is that this is probably more, I mean, not to diminish it, but this is kind of the JV test before the test. If Texas goes and wins this game easy, then they're a national title contender. Then they're real. If they struggle and still win, I expect them to win, to be clear. But if it's a slog, if it's difficult, if they have issues, I don't see how they match up with some of the other teams in this bracket. Even that second round game potentially against Arizona State. So I do think Texas wins this game, but it's I think going to be a little bit of a foreshadowing type game.
I am curious on the other side of the ball if Clemson can get Phil Maffa running a little bit better and kind of, create a little variety in that offense, because they do have some good talent. I mean, Bryant Wesco has been a good receiver as a freshman, and Cade Klubnik has been better overall. And I think while he isn't necessarily the talent they thought they were going to have there, he's been good. He's been good, and he's gotten better over the season. I'm very curious about how this one's going to go. Are we going to make kind of bracket picks and kind of sort it out? I am. This is okay. It's funny we started with this game. This is the one where I'm picking my biggest upset. I actually could see Clemson going in there, and I could see something not. And again, I'm not saying Texas is the same level of talent as SMU. That I don't know if that'll ever be the case. Texas has just got so many better guys, but I could see Ewers having some problems. I could see Clemson, because they're going to be preparing for this game. They're going to know, all right, we saw how statuesque Quinn Ewers was. We can get around that edge if we can come up with techniques that can create some force him to be mobile in the backfield. We can cause problems, and they're probably not going to start Quinn Ewers again. The reason I say that is because that means we know what's happening when Quinn Ewers comes on the field. We can prepare for that, But if they can get Ewers a little bit disrupted, I could see them accidentally having some turnovers, which Texas has been known to do, and Clemson has been more than happy to take advantage of those situations. So they're my upset pick. Even though I'm not I'm not saying I'm 100% confident in it, but I wanted to have one funny path. And Clemson, baby, you are mine. So go Tigers.
Well, and again, we'll get into the first round matchups even deeper on the next show, but I will give people a little foreshadowing for this game. Cade Klubnik and Quinn Ewers have played before. They played in the 2021 6A state title game.
And who won that
actually,
game?
Yep, Cade Klubnik won that game. Though I will say, Quinn Ewers had 2 interceptions. At least one of, if not both of, went to Quinn Ewers' future teammate, Michael Tapp, who walked on at Texas, now an All-American in the Texas secondary. So lots of storylines in this game. Trust me, we will get into all of them on the next show. But for now, let's move on to Tennessee versus Ohio State.
So for this one, my goodness, the storylines are just fantastic for Ohio State. Not if you're an Ohio State fan, but just fantastic if you're trying to have the sheer drama in all of this. Because the fact that we have a team, the last time we saw them, they were fighting the guys that just beat them over a flag and being pepper sprayed on the Ohio Stadium field. There's a lot of stress going on there. I mean, they have the most talented team, hands down. It's pretty uncontroversial. Going into this season, they spent millions and millions and millions. You know, they've been happy to throw out kind of numbers that seem to get higher as they go along. But when it comes down to it, they got in their head against Michigan, and a lot of folks in the Ohio State, fan base are upset at him. So that's going to be an interesting crowd. It's going to be ready to turn on its own home team. Plus, they had that whole screw up where they apparently had the easiest to guess ticket code in history. So Tennessee fans, I mean, their own AD has said like they're expecting at least 20,000 Tennessee fans in the audience. And they're trying to kind of manage that expectation. And with ticket brokers buying other tickets, who knows how many Vols are going to show up for that game. So it's a tough one. I mean, the Vols are good. The Vols are kind of they are a great story if you like the fact that you're never really dead in the playoff race towards the end, because 3 weeks out, we thought they were going to be looking in the whole time. And then the SEC decided to have its own version of chaos. And now they're the number 9 seed, which no one foresaw a few weeks ago. How do you see this one breaking down?
Yeah, bet the under in this game, because this is 2 of the top 3 to 4 defenses in all of college football, with 2 offenses that were awesome against bad teams and really struggled at times against good teams. But frankly, my calculus just comes down to this. Tennessee and Ohio State, let's just say their defenses are a wash, right? Let's just say their defenses are a wash. Ohio State has so many more quality offensive players than Tennessee, it's not even funny. Now, you can make a real case that Dylan Sampson, Tennessee's running back, is the best player on offense in the game. Obviously Jeremiah. So there's some other guys who would but like you can make that case 100%. I don't think that there's does Ohio State have the next 6? Do they, when you're talking about skill position guys? Cooper Mays, Tennessee center, is somewhere in there, but I think that you can make the case that spots 2 through 7 are all Ohio State players. Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate. They just have so many guys on offense, and Tennessee doesn't have any. They don't have any guys who really scare you, especially with the way that Nico Imalieva has struggled against good teams. So I just don't see how Tennessee scores any real points. I just think that this is a game where they could score fewer than 10 points, to be honest. And maybe it's a 17-7 game. Maybe it's a 13-9 game. I have no idea, but I think that Ohio State just has way more explosive plays in them.
I am going to say that there is something going on at Ohio State that I've seen happen at other teams where they're very talented. On paper, it should all work out. USC was the king of this for a while there, especially when the 2012 season when I forgot his name, the star quarterback who should have gone in the top couple of.
Was that Cody Kessler or was that
not
Matt
Cody
Barkley?
Kessler? It was before him. But anyway, he was supposed to
Matt
go.
Barkley?
Matt Barkley. He was supposed to be top 3 draft pick, and he sank his draft and everything in the fiasco that followed that the season before. Sometimes you can have a completely loaded team and things just implode. And I do worry about the psychology around that program after they bombed so badly with a much inferior team. And you're right. If Ohio State can focus. If Ohio State can just do what they have, use what they have properly, they can win. But I wonder if they're rattled, and I don't know if they've had a get right game. I think Tennessee is the hotter team in this. They're excited. They want to be there. They can't believe they're there. Their fans are going to be there. It's going to be a bit bonkers. And if the moment things start to look in any way questionable, and I'm not even saying like a pick six, I'm like saying their first couple of drives stall because the defense on the other side is good, by the way. You need to wear the other side down. I could see that crowd starting to turn on their own team. And if that happens, they're going to be like, I don't even like playing this game like for that moment. And I could see Tennessee pulling this one off. I really could. Tennessee, and I'm just going to say, I don't necessarily pick them to win at all, but I wouldn't be shocked if somehow they have a route where if they pull a couple of weird upsets, they could be in an interesting position. And I don't think they'd win it all, but I would love to see Tennessee get so far because first of all, it would kill so many. It would be like a complete storyline breaker. It would be, oh, look, the SEC's not even necessarily the best team in the SEC. SEC is still awesome, especially because they'd have to go through 2 Big Ten teams on the way. Yeah, I think it would be absolutely hilarious. And I would not blame Tennessee fans around the country for being completely just completely full of themselves and completely intolerable for the entire offseason heading into next season.
Well, I'll tell you what. So, look, again, we'll go back and forth a little bit more about this later, but I think exactly the opposite is going to happen. I think that Tennessee is wildly overrated. I think that they are a team being propped up by a win against an Alabama team that isn't any good. Their second best win is like probably Vanderbilt, and they didn't even they were streaky in that game, and now they have to play in order potentially Ohio State, then Oregon, then Texas. No, absolutely not. I'm not dealing with them. They cannot hang. To me, like I'm not calling them the worst team in the playoff because they're not. I think that they are the streakiest team in the playoff, and they have been like their last 2 games against power conference opponents. Let's actually, we don't even have to go. Since that Alabama game, 10-point win versus Kentucky, who's not good. A 19-point win versus Mississippi State where they didn't look awesome. They got crushed by Georgia. They played Utah. Cool. Congratulations. And then they needed to come back against Vanderbilt. Now again, they're streaky, so they they scored 28 points in the second quarter against Vanderbilt, and it was kind of over from there. But I just don't think that team is that special.
If the streak happens at the right time, though, all you need is to come now, baby.
Yeah. The thing is, when you're playing, though, the number one defense in the country, arguably, the streak is we scored a touchdown. That's what the streak is going to be. And then it's going to be going 3 and out 5 times in a row with drives that take a total of 1 minute and 47 seconds combined. That's the issue with Tennessee.
Just anyway, what we saw, though, from Ohio State against Michigan, they could put themselves somehow stupidly in the same position.
But Michigan is a team that wants to hold on to the ball, and Tennessee is a team that wants to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible. Anyway, again, we got to keep moving. We got to keep moving.
Yeah.
SMU versus Penn State. SMU versus Penn State.
This is a tough one, right? Because we have, and I'm going to be honest, my whole opinion on this game changed in the last 24 hours. And that had to do with the whole fiasco going on at Penn State. And again, nobody's individual's fault. It's really an unfixable quirk for the way that we have with the transfer portal. Obviously, Pribola, the backup quarterback, has entered. His own coach said, don't blame him. It's just the system. And then we found out the likely reason why. Drew Aller announced he's coming back. With Drew Aller announcing he's coming back, at least for the playoffs, I am way more in favor of how good Penn State's going to be because he's going to be playing because he knows he's going to be there next season. He's still trying to build his NFL resume. These are going to be meaningful games for him. We're going to see him at his maximum effort, and especially considering that they're coming back next year. So I think Penn State, with and the sheer amount of that, obviously the pressure that the defensive line is going to be there. I mean, it's one of the best out there. We've talked about them quite a bit. I'm very curious to see how this is going to go because I think SMU, after what we saw in the championship game of the ACC, they looked a little like they were in shock. They didn't know if they were ready to be there, and they kind of got their senses back to them and nearly came back. But I don't think Penn State's going to be the place that's going to work again. I think Penn State at home, daytime whiteout, which I don't know what that'll be. I mean, reflect the sun at your opponent. I'm not sure, but it's going to be cold, but not crazy cold. I'm not saying that's going to be a huge factor in all of this. Like the one game that's supposed to be snowy is the game where both teams are from that area, the championship of Indiana. But I do think this is going to be Penn State's to take. SMU, I love you, but I don't think this is going to be it for you guys.
So now, of course, Penn State has home field advantage, and so like that matters. But let's just, for 1 second, let's go to neutral site, okay? On a neutral field, I went over to our friends over at collegefootballinsiders.com. Do you know what Penn State's win probability is on a neutral field?
They have to be favored.
Yeah, but what percentage?
I don't know.
Think?
I would give them at least 70%.
52.2%.
What?
On a neutral field?
What are they saying?
They are in EPA margin. Penn State is 11, SMU is 12. In defensive success rate allowed, Penn State is 19, SMU is 12. I think that people don't appreciate how good this SMU team is, specifically on defense. They actually have the most pressures of any team in the college football playoff. Like, they are really, really disruptive on the defensive side of the ball. And actually, if you look specifically at dropback success rates, they allow the 10th best dropback success rate in the country. So, like, they are really good specifically against the pass. And when you look at Penn State, they run the ball at a decent level, but, like, they have kind of, I don't want to go as far as calling them, like, bum slayers, but, like, they've put up huge passing numbers against overmatched teams. And when they've played better teams, like, they've passed the ball okay. And I think that the decisive factor of this game, and the reason that I'm picking SMU to upset Penn State, other than the fact that James Franklin losing the first home playoff game is perfect, but other than that, I think that SMU has a quarterback in Kevin Jennings who is a master of, with his arm or legs, taking what's available. And when I look at Penn State, I think that Drew Aller has done that at a decent level with his arm. I don't think he has the ability to do that with his legs at a high level. Now, he's run the ball better this year than he did last year, absolutely. But I think that Kevin Jennings is just another level of that. And the other thing, too, that I like about SMU versus Penn State is that Penn State clearly has the best pass catcher in this game in Tyler Warren. Not even close. Not even close. But like I was kind of talking about when I spoke about Ohio State versus Tennessee, SMU might have like the next 6 guys as pass catchers in this game. Roderick Daniels, Moochie Dixon, Kelvonte Smith, Jordan Hudson, Matthew Hibner. Brashard Smith as a running back is a big-time pass catcher for them and also a 1,200-yard receiver. You know, when you look at Penn State, like, again, Warren is a huge one. I just don't think that those receivers scare you very much if you're a good defense. Like, I think that that's the biggest flaw with this team, is that I think they have a good quarterback in Drew Aller. I think they have a great offensive system. I think that they've got a fantastic tight end, along with Harold Fannin in contention for the best in the country. Mm-hmm. I just don't feel that scared of the rest of their passing game. Now, Penn State can own this game if they can own it with the running game. If they can just run the ball with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen consistently. I just don't know if they're going to do that. And so I'm going to pick the hungrier team, the team with less to lose, the team that wants to make a statement on this stage and is this is the culmination of 40 years for SMU. I'm picking SMU to pull the upset.
I wouldn't be shocked, but I think ultimately, though, I'm going to be curious to see what the turnover ratio is in this game. And now, granted, against a very tough Oregon defense, Aller threw a couple of picks, but SMU will sometimes just decide, like, Duke, here's 6 interceptions or 6 turnovers. See what you can do with them.
I do have a response to that, okay. And that's that Kevin Jennings actually broke a finger in that game that we didn't learn about until after the season. So, like,
but he didn't break his finger against Clemson, so
yeah, and then he scored 28 straight points.
That's true.
They were after the first quarter where they were a little shell shocked. they were by far the better team in that game. And I think that if they, and this is a big part, they have to be ready from the first opening snap. They can't mess around like they have in some of these games this season. But if they're ready to go, I think they're as good as anybody, and I think that they can beat Penn State.
Well, let's quickly wrap up the first bit of this by talking about really the first game of the first round, and that's going to be the Friday night game between Notre Dame and Indiana. This is one where, as we said, even though the weather looks like the worst, these are the two teams that are actually ready for it. This is going to be a big game. I mean, just for Indiana's fans seem to be treating this, and I don't blame them, as like, just get into this. This is the get your butt in this stadium because this might be it. And I think they're probably right. I think Notre Dame begrudgingly has proven that they are a stronger team, and they have certainly the ability to play on the high level. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So we saw Indiana play one game, and let's say 1.5 games, including that Michigan game, against teams that are dominant in the trenches. Obviously, Ohio State, and then to an extent that Michigan game. And against Ohio State, right? They kind of got blown out. Like they kind of just couldn't hang on the offensive line specifically. I think that their defense hung a lot better than people remember. Like their defense, when they were given a full field, got stopped. They just kept turning over the ball so much that Ohio State kept starting with the short fields. And then, look, Michigan caused them some issues with their trenches. They definitely couldn't run the ball. They went 28 carries for 40 yards in that game, and that was a huge issue. Only 20 points scored. And, their defense, again, kept them in the game because Michigan couldn't do anything. But this is, I think, the fundamental question. Is Notre Dame an elite trench team? Like, are they a Michigan, Ohio State level trench team? Because there's a lot of good trench teams that aren't that level, that aren't that good. I think that Notre Dame might be. I'm not like all the way there, but I think I'm mostly there, that Notre Dame is going to be an elite trenches team. And if that's the case, I just worry that Indiana is not going to be able to move the ball with any consistency, even with a great game plan, and even with, I would argue, the better quarterback in this game in Curtis Rourke.
Absolutely. I think Notre Dame is just going to have a little bit too much for them. Well, when we get back from our break, we are going to now look beyond this with the teams we've picked and look at the quarterfinals, semifinals, and championship here on the College Football Survivor Show.
The College Football Survivor Show, where playoff survival is always on the line.
All right, so now we've got through the first round. We know which teams, and we're going to kind of, I think, hand off to each other on who thinks is going to win which of the quarterfinals. Let's start with the Rose Bowl. So the Rose Bowl, it's obviously Oregon is already there, and as number 1 seed, they face the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. We've gone in different directions on that. How do you foresee your Oregon-Ohio State game going?
I don't want to exaggerate, but I think this might be the national title game in my bracket. I think that Oregon and Ohio State are the two best teams in the field, in my opinion. Texas is a factor, Georgia's a factor, but I think that these are the two best. And when we saw this game played before, Ohio State made a mental mistake at the end of the game. Not just the slide, but also the offensive pass interference by Jeremiah Smith. If he doesn't commit that, they kick a game-winning field goal. They won on the road at Oregon. I think that Ohio State is a better team than Oregon when they play like it, which hasn't been every week. But I think that's I think that this is going to be a fantastic test for both of these teams. I lean Ohio State. I don't feel good about it at all. Like I said, I think that whoever wins this game is probably winning the national championship, and I'm picking Ohio State to do it.
Wow. Yeah. So, well, I have a different person in this game because I thought Tennessee was going to take advantage of Ohio State's chaos after the last game and somehow defeat a team that is more talented. The problem is, I don't think it's easy to see them going into the Rose Bowl and facing a team that is talented and, by the way, is very focused on and has been focusing for weeks. So I think that's where the happy story of Tennessee ends. I think Oregon, just their talent across the board, is going to have no trouble taking care of them on both sides of the ball. And certainly on offense, they have enough to get past what is a good Tennessee defense, and that Ducks defense is going to do more than enough. So the Rose Bowl, in my mind, is going to be Oregon, but for you, you're putting Ohio State next on to the Cotton Bowl against whoever wins our next group. So let's jump over to the Peach Bowl since we're building this out. Number 4, Arizona State gets the winner of Texas Clemson. Why don't you take this up? You've got Texas heading into that game.
Yeah, this is a really interesting matchup. Like I mentioned, 10 players, I believe, on Arizona State's roster started their careers at Texas. There's a couple of staff connections there that kind of made this happen, but Xavier Alford is the headliner there, their star defensive back, who is an all Big 12 first team member. And I think they're going to be really motivated in this game. I picked against Arizona State in the Big 12 title game because they lost Jordan Tyson. I'm going to do it again here. I was wrong last time. Maybe I'll be wrong again this time. But Texas has the first or second best defense in the country. It's them or Ohio State. Those are the top two. And they are specifically good against the pass. I'm worried that for how good Cam Scadaboo is, that Texas is going to be able to win that battle up front. And that while I think that Cam Scadaboo will continue to turn, to add 1 or 2 yards to every one of his runs just because he's really good, that's going to look more like getting 2 yards than it is getting 6 yards. And if that's the case, like, it's just going to be a really tough matchup for them. So I think Arizona State can hang, but I'm taking Texas to win.
So in my side of the Peach Bowl, I've got Arizona State facing Clemson because I said Clemson was going to somehow pull an upset on Texas. And here's a game I find fascinating because it's in Atlanta. This is going to be a place Clemson, even though Arizona State's had early shots at tickets, I don't know how many of them are going to make that trip. I think we're going to see a good Clemson fan base showing up for this game. I think the Tigers, drunk on the success against the Longhorns, are going to be able to put together something to defeat Arizona State and against all odds, make the semifinals against the Oregon Ducks. And how that goes, we'll get to that in a second. I'm not saying, do you believe in miracles? Let's just say that. Moving on, though, let's get to the other half of the bracket, the Sugar Bowl. We've got Georgia. Both of us have against Notre Dame. That's one where, I'm sorry, Indiana, we really don't know if that's going to work out for you. But what do we make of this? Because I am absolutely intrigued by this game because I don't know the quarterback situation. I don't think it's what going to be Gunnar Stockton. I mean, it's
probably Gunnar Stockton.
So yeah. I am concerned about Georgia. Notre Dame, I'm not anticipating any crazy injuries. Not for any team. I mean, that can always happen, and that's what we've talked about, depth and all that stuff. But assuming Notre Dame gets into that game pretty much full force, I think they're going to be the better matchup. I just think they're going to be ready to take advantage of an offense that is now kind of forced to relearn the wheel in the high stakes scenario.
Yeah, I think that Notre Dame, you look at this matchup, I think it's a really tough one for a potential first-time starting quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. I went to the College Football Insider's projection. It's Notre Dame 25.65, Georgia 25.23. And by the way, it's not like those projections account for the loss of a starting quarterback, right? Like, that's not how numbers work. And by the way, specifically, Notre Dame has the number 1 drop back passing defense in all of college football, allowing success on only 32.1% of snaps. So I think that Notre Dame comes into this game, and by the way, has a lot more to gain from this game than Georgia does. I think that this will be a little bit of a motivation gap in this game. Not that Georgia isn't motivated to win the national title, but like, this is a prove-it moment for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. This is we are good enough to contend with the best teams in the country, and we can do it right here at Notre Dame. Because if they can't, let's just say, right? Let's say that they get blown out by Georgia, which I don't think that's on the table, but let's just say that they do. Let's say they lose by 3 touchdowns. Then that becomes hey, Marcus Freeman, how does the Ohio State job sound? Like, that's when it becomes really quick. Or, hey, Marcus Freeman, now he did just agree to an extension. I mean, look, here's the reality, right? Like, if a team wants to hire your coach and your coach wants to leave, you're probably going to figure it out. Like, you're probably going to figure it out. No, I don't think it's going to happen, to be clear. I think Notre Dame's going to come into this game. I think they're going to show up big. I think specifically, too, Riley Leonard is the type of quarterback that I actually think matches up really interestingly against this Georgia defense with his ability to both scramble and be a factor in the designed run game. They've got a great offensive line that's developed so much over the course of the season. I think that they're even getting better in the passing game. And this Georgia team, man, they're so flawed. They're so flawed. And they've had so many issues all year long. And I think that Notre Dame can take advantage. I think that they're going to win.
It's so funny, the idea of a coach, like you're absolutely right. If a college wants a coach wants a college, and the money is for some of these big teams doesn't matter. Imagine if, and again, sorry, this is a side note, but it's related to this. Imagine if Ryan Day does crash and burn early on in the playoffs, and next season stays, and it doesn't go so great. And let's say a team in North Carolina has a pretty good season, and suddenly we're listening to, Bill Belichick's buyout after June 1st is only $1 million. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but my goodness, could you imagine if suddenly that turned into, oh my gosh, Bill Belichick at at Ohio State? That would be. I'm just saying, highly unlikely. I'm just throwing out there as kind of humor, but also I wouldn't be entirely shocked, just because of how fans tend to be. But let's keep on moving here. So we're left with one more of the quarterfinals. We have the Fiesta Bowl. Both of us, well, actually, no, we went in different directions on this. You have SMU going in there. I have Penn State, but the opponent is Boise State in their most dangerous position, a team in the Fiesta Bowl. How do you see SMU handling this?
Is Ashton Genty's girlfriend going to be on the sidelines? How is that? How are we setting that one up? I think I need more information about whether a proposal is coming.
There's going to be people who don't remember the Oklahoma game with Ian Johnson running onto the sideline and proposing to his girlfriend right there and there. That is one of those great moments, and I watched it unfold on TV live, and I just even remember. And I felt bad for the reporter because he knew this was apparently going to potentially happen, so he kind of spoiled it by accident. It's like, oh, so you're going to propose to her now? And then he kind of like jumps. He's like, oh, dude, you jumped the gun. And he jumps on the knee. And again, I feel bad for that guy because it was just, and no one remembers that. I mean, thankfully for that reporter, it was just one of those moments where you're just not used to calling that live. But okay. That was the reference for those who may not be old enough to have watched that game live.
So no, but in all seriousness, so like this is a really interesting matchup. Because I think that Boise State's going to be able to run on SMU. I think they will. Obviously, they've run on literally everybody in the entire country this year. I think that this is a big how much can Maddox Madsen provide for this offense. He's played really well this year, to be honest. Super efficient. Obviously, a lot of it is off of Genty runs, but like he's done exactly what he's needed to do. So I think that this game probably will turn into a little bit of a shootout. The other piece, too, is how well can SMU's offensive line protect Kevin Jennings in this game. Now, I have them doing a decent job against a Penn State defense that's better than Boise State's, although Boise State's pass rush, outside of Abdul Carter, obviously, is probably a little bit more complete than what Penn State is bringing to the table, though Penn State's better on the back end. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this one's a really tough matchup. It sort of depends on what you feel about the second half of Boise State's season as well. If they kind of just were packing in to try to be like, let's just make it to the playoff and not lose. But I'm picking SMU to keep it going. I think that the 11 seed wins 2 straight and makes it all the way to the semifinals.
That's not bad. I mean, on the other side of the bracket, I had the 12 seed Clemson making it all the way. So it's all
that's true. That's true. We got some legit Cinderellas in here.
And interestingly, we're both saying the ACC team is going to be that team. We think the ACC team is going to be the one that surprised it all, just the different ACC team. Now, for me, I had Penn State against Boise State. As I may have tipped my hand here, I think there's going to be that moment of Fiesta glory where Boise State against Penn State. Penn State's got some, I mean, I'd be very curious to see how they would line up against each other, especially with knowing that you've got Abdul Carter on one side. But I think that if they get I think Boise State is going to have that extra juice, that extra magic. They're going to be able to put together a good game that puts them into that Orange Bowl against Notre Dame. And will be one of, in my bracket, one of the two, I guess, top 4 seeds to make it through. So that brings us to our semifinals. I think we are I think only one team we've agreed on is Notre Dame. I think we only have Notre Dame being in the Orange Bowl. So let's stay with the Orange Bowl. How do you think Notre Dame's going to do against SMU?
Yeah, this is, I think, where SMU runs into trouble. I think that Notre Dame's a team that definitely can take away their passing game. I think that they're physical enough that they're going to wear down SMU's rushing defense, especially because SMU, again, really, really good against the pass, not quite as good against the run. And I think that Notre Dame is just one of those physical teams that's just going to come at you over and over and over again. The other piece, too, that I'll mention when you get to this round is this is, I think, where depth and roster talent really starts to show up.
Mhm.
And SMU's top line is fantastically good. I think that, and they are building long term. Like they are going to, in 2 or 3 years, have a chance to be really special with their twos and threes. But I think that Notre Dame is just at a different point in their program right now than SMU. And I think that they take it and go to the national championship game.
You hit exactly the nail on the head. I think as much as Boise State's doing, will have been thrilled to get through that first round, and with the first round bye, get to the semifinal. I think ultimately that's where attrition's going to wear them down. Notre Dame, as you said, is physical and they're built deep, and that's something where Notre Dame is probably Boise State's just going to wear down at some point, and I don't think they have what it takes to get through 3 games against very tough opponents, no matter who they are paired up against. Certainly again, once in a while, I mean, a 1 game early in the season against Oregon, great, but back to back to back to back teams of close to that caliber, I don't think they can do it. I think Notre Dame will proceed on to play in Mercedes-Benz on the 20th. Now, on the flip side, we have 2 different brackets here. You have Ohio State versus Texas, which actually is a hell of a good game. I got to say that for a Cotton Bowl game, I'm going to say Ohio State fans, it's going to not be I don't get into a bidding match with Texas fans. They're gonna be filling that Cotton Bowl. Wow, I'm excited. I'm actually excited for that game, even though I don't even have it in my bracket. How do you think that's gonna go though?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, too. That one is going to be at the Cotton Bowl, so I would be, regardless whether it's my game or your game, which, like you mentioned, complete opposites. I will be in attendance for it. I'm excited for that one. So, like I mentioned, I feel like. Well, actually, let me say this. I think that one of the more interesting dynamics of the Ohio State Oregon game is that I think that Ohio State matches up better against Texas than Oregon does. I think that if Oregon's playing Texas, it's a much more interesting game for Texas. Ohio State, though, they, I think, have the ability to erase Texas's offense. I do. I think that their defense is that good, and I think that Texas's offense is that flawed right now. I don't think they're going to be able to run, and I mean, and that's a theme that you're going to see me keep coming back to. Is when Texas struggles to run the ball, more is put on Quinn Ewers' shoulders, and when that happens, bad things have happened this year. When that's happened, uh, I do think that we will see, just an aside, I do think we will see more Arch Manning running game in the college football playoff than we saw in the regular season as Steve Sarkisian tries to pull out all the stops in these matchups. But I think that Ohio State is a more complete team than Texas right now. I think that they'll be able to wear them down. Um, Now, this is, I think, also incredibly important, which is Ohio State has had 1 or 2 real games where their defensive line has been a terror rushing the passer. I think you need to unlock that for this matchup. This needs to be a Jim Knowles masterclass on that side of the ball. Um, we haven't seen it consistently from Ohio State, but like I need the JT Tuimoloau 2-sack game. I need them to rush with their linebackers. Like you need to be aggressive if you're Ohio State going into this matchup. But I think that they just have more answers on their roster than Texas does at this point. And I think that Texas overall is a better defense than they were last year. But the one thing that they had last year was their interior defensive line was like one of the best we've had in years. If they had those 2 interior guys, Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, like they did last year, I think this is a different matchup.
I'm going to go really quickly through mine. I think Oregon against Clemson is going to be yet again. Clemson is just not going to be ready for the Oregon's just going to have to be thankful to have another team that is just not up to their strength. So my national championship, I'll just jump to it's Oregon versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame has taken the benefit in their games. Indiana, I think, maybe I'm counting them out too much. Georgia is unfortunately not the Georgia they were before this particular matchup was set. Boise State, not quite ready to play Notre Dame. So they're going to get into Mercedes-Benz Stadium kind of with the easier route. And that should be commented on if they make it all the way through. So Oregon, I don't think they're going to have trouble with Notre Dame. I think they're going to just go right through them and be crowned the first 12-team national champion, undefeated. Amazing. They'll have earned it. And let's drop the confetti. Now, for you, though, you have, oh my God, where is Lou Holtz has to be the guest of honor for this one, by the way. But how do you see this one going?
Yep, I've got Ohio State versus Notre Dame in this matchup. This is a really interesting matchup. Of course, Marcus Freeman, his former playing location at Ohio State. Two great Midwestern programs. Another North on North, by the way, national championship game, which would be kind of crazy as well. I think Ohio State wins it. I'm thinking Ohio State to win the national championship. I did it in the preseason. I did it in the midseason. They kept proving me wrong every single way in the worst way possible. I can't quit them. I think that they are just so much better as a roster than the rest of college football right now. And at some point, their coaching staff has to realize it. I think they beat Notre Dame. I think Ohio State is your 2024-25 national champion.
And Ryan Day goes in the next season under stress of why can't he beat Michigan no matter what? Oh my goodness. Love it. Well, that was, we're going to go to wrap this one up. We'll get more into detail on all these games as they come up. But I just want to thank all of you for listening. Thank our producer, Joey Aliberti. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us at X and TikTok at CFP Survivor Show. He's Shehan Jayaraja. You can find his work at Shehan Jayaraja on X and TikTok. I'm Bobak Hayeri, part of the group that runs RCFP on Reddit. Thank you for listening.
The College Football Survivor Show, where playoff survival is always on the line.